You are listening to Woodland Walks, a podcast for the Woodland Trust, presented by Adam Shaw. We protect and plant trees for people, for wildlife.
Well, today I am in Sheffield, known of course as the Steel City, renowned for steel production during the 19th century Industrial Revolution. But despite that historical heritage, woodland and green spaces were, and still are, the lungs of the city and seen as vitally important. In fact, it is now, according to Sheffield University, the UK's greenest city, with 250 public parks and over 4.5 million trees. That's more trees per person than any other city in Europe. And in 2022, Sheffield was named as Tree City of the World. And I'm meeting Catherine Nuttgens at Endcliffe Park. Now that's a 15-hectare open space, opened in 1887 to commemorate the Jubilee of Queen Victoria. And interestingly, in the middle of the countryside, it is 2 miles from the city centre, the first in a series of connected green spaces known collectively as Porter Valley Parks, all of which lie along the course of the Porter Brook.
Well, although it really is coming to spring, we've been hit with some rather unseasonable snow, and I thought we were going to start with some snow sound effects, but actually this is a very fast-moving river that I'm standing by, and I am meeting Catherine. Hello. So, Catherine, just explain a bit about who you are, first of all.
Okay, yes, I'm Catherine Nuttgens. I used to be the urban lead for the Woodland Trust, but I've just moved into independent work as an urban forester, an independent urban forester.
Fantastic. And we've arranged to meet by this, I was going to say babbling brook, it's really much more than that, isn't it? So is this the river, the local river?
This is the River Porter, so this is one of 5 rivers in Sheffield. And it runs all the way up the Porter Valley, which is where we're going to be walking today.
Let's head off. So I've no idea where I'm going.
We're going that way.
Okay.
Yes, let's go this way. So,
okay, you don't say, you sound already confused.
I was going to look at that tree over there because we planted it.
Oh, I said we can go have a look at that.
Alive?
Which tree? It's
this
still
tree
alive.
here. It's just so a total aside for everything that we're doing.
We're already getting sidetracked. To see if a tree we planted is dead.
Yeah, I mean, this was one of my old role at Sheffield Council was being community forestry manager, and our role was to plant trees around the city. So one of the things that we planted were these war memorial trees, and it's very hard if you plant a tree to not go back to it and say, how's it doing? Is it okay? This is it. It's looking okay.
Well, it looks more than okay, and also it's still got 3 poppy wreaths on it from Remembrance Sunday, and a dedication, lest we forget, to all the brave men and women of Sheffield who gave their lives and those who hereafter continue to give in pursuit of freedom and peace. 2018 it was planted. Okay.
One of the reasons that I wanted to check it, it's quite a challenging place to plant a tree, as there's an awful lot of footfall here. Right. So the ground is really compacted. I think it's a red oak.
A red oak?
That should be the right tree for this place. When they go in, they need so much water. I think it's 60 litres of water a week when it's dry. Wow. So keeping them alive, especially when the ground's so compacted, is quite a challenge. And it's something that happens all around the country, is that people think, oh, I've planted a tree and now I can walk away. But actually, the real work goes into sort of making sure trees have got enough water so that they can, for at least the first sort of 2 or 3 years of planting, so that they can survive.
Brilliant. All right. Good. Well, look, we've already got distracted.
I'm sorry.
We haven't even started. We've gone the wrong direction. But anyway, your oak is doing very well indeed.
It is. It's good.
So tell me a little bit about where we're going and why you've taken me on this particular trip.
Sheffield is actually the most wooded, it's the most treed and wooded city in Europe. There are more trees per head in Sheffield than there are in any other city in Europe. So I thought the Porter Valley is quite good because there's quite a lot of cafes on the way, so that's quite good. But also it was a great way of describing about how the landscape of Sheffield has kind of shaped the city, and how kind of people are shaped by the landscape, but also the landscape is shaped by the people. And here's a real case in point, because although it all looks very beautiful now, and as we go up the valley you'll see, it gets more rural. Actually, it's all artificial. This is a post-industrial landscape.
So, I mean, when you say that, I mean, this is a created landscape. I don't really understand what you mean. I mean, you didn't knock down factories. This must have been natural ground, no?
Well, it was natural, but basically Sheffield's famous for iron and steel, and it's also on the edge of the Peak District. So there's these 5 very fast-flowing rivers that actually provided the power for the grinding halls, the places where they made blades and scissors and scythes and all these different things. And so along rivers like this one, there were what called the grinding halls, the little factories where they use the power of the water to sharpen those blades and to forge them and things. As we go further up, we'll start to see how the porter kind of has been sort of sectioned off. It's been chopped up and made into ponds. There's what we call goits that go off, and they would have been the little streams that go off and power each grinding hull along here.
I mean, you say Sheffield is the most wooded city in the UK per head, and yet it hit the headlines a few years ago when the council started chopping down trees, and it wasn't entirely clear why, but the local population were up in arms. So why was that? Was that an aberration, or was that a change in policy?
No, I mean, people call Sheffield the outdoor city. People in Sheffield have always been really connected to their trees. But I think when we got to for the street tree protests, the vision was beautiful flat pavements, and there were just these annoying trees in the way that were lifting all the paving slabs and everything. And we thought, what we need is lovely flat pavements. All the people that are complaining about trees all the time, they'll be really happy, But obviously that wasn't the case, because people actually do quite like the trees. So what happened here was that the council decided to send a crew to fell in the middle of the night, and so they knocked on.
Very James Bond.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, honestly, it was mad. So the policeman came, knocked on people's doors, said, "Sorry, can you move your cars, because we want to cut down the trees." And obviously, if a policeman knocks on your door in the middle of the night, it's it's pretty scary. So the ladies that they did that to said, "No, I think I'm going to sit under this tree instead." And it was just mad. You just think, what are they doing? Because it was in the Guardian, the morning. It got international by the sort of lunchtime. And it was, if you wanted a way to create an international protest movement about trees, then that's the way to do it. So, but I mean, that was the thing. Sheffield is so good. It's not an affluent city, but people do stuff in Sheffield. Something's happened, someone's doing a thing about it, and they're really good at organising. And in the end, thank goodness, the council stopped. If there are things going on in your city, dialogue is always the best way. And consulting and co-designing with the public is so important, because that's what these trees are for. They're here to benefit people. Yeah. So if you're not discussing kind of the plans with the people, then you're not properly doing your job, really.
And you said there's lots of choice of places to go with trees in and around Sheffield. And the reason you've chosen this particular place is why? Why does this stand out?
Well, I mean, first of all, it is a beautiful valley that's kind of very accessible. We've got, here the kind of manufactured, the porter has been Victorianised. It's all got these lovely little rills and things.
It's got lovely little what?
Little rill, where
rills.
Little rills, kind of, maybe that's the wrong word,
No,
but the kind of...
You're teaching me so many new words. It's good. So what is a rill?
So, you know, just kind of little bits in the stream where they've made it,
Like rocks
you know,
and
kind of
stuff.
little rocks and
Yeah,
things.
that is beautiful. It's like tiny little waterfall. I think it's wonderful. I love it.
So here, for example, I mean, it looks lovely. Like these ponds that we have, I mean, there's always, there's things like the kingfishers and there's the kind of Endcliffe Park heron that everyone takes pictures of. And often mandarin ducks. I think we passed some mandarin ducks earlier on, didn't we? But this is a holding pool for what would have sort of powered the grinding hull that now has gone. So it's actually a piece of industrial heritage.
Although it looks natural.
Yeah, it looks nice. I mean, it has now all been kind of made nice. In the 30s, some of these pools were kind of put over to, and probably in Victorian times as well, they were actually swimming areas. They converted them into swimming.
I mean, the water's, I mean, you can't see this if you're listening, but the water's super muddy or brown. It's not appealing to swim in, I have to say. But okay. No one does that these days.
No, well, they do up at Crooks actually. There people go and swim that. That's a fishing lake, so it's much deeper.
Right. Are you a wild swimmer?
A little bit, yes.
You have?
Let's go out into the peak a bit more and
wow.
out into the.
You see, that's
the lovely bits.
I mean, I can't get into a swimming pool unless it's bath temperature, let alone.
It's lovely in the summer. I'm not a cold swimmer, but I do love it in the summer. It's nice. I mean, that's what's great about Sheffield, really, in that like there's so much nature just within sort of 20 minutes walk. I mean, some people just get on their bike and go out into the peak, and whether it's you're a climber or a wild swimmer or a runner or just a walker, or you just like beautiful things, you know, it's kind of here.
And there is an extraordinary amount of water. I mean, you probably can hear this, but there seems to be river on all sides of us. So we've been walking up the Porter Brook, which you can hear in the background, and we've come across Shepherd Wheel, a water-powered grinding hull, last worked in the 1930s.
Come this way a little bit. You can see there's the wheel that they've put together.
Yeah.
So inside, I'm just wondering whether is there a window we can look in? But so Sheffield, a very independent sort of a place. What used to happen is the little mesters. They were men.
Sorry, that's another word.
That is another word.
What's a mester?
A mester is, I think it was like a little master, so like a master cutler or whatever. Right. A little mester, but in there there were individual grindstones with the grinding benches on, and they hired a bench to do their own piecework. Right. So it was very independent. Everyone was self-employed, and you know so the wheel actually sort of was important for probably quite a few livelihoods.
Right. We come to a big sign, Shepherd's Wheel in the Porter Valley. Well, look at this. Turn the wheel to find out more. Select. Oh, I have no idea what's going. Hold on a sec. No, that does absolutely nothing. It's a local joke to make the tourists look idiotic. Look, there's another nutter just turning a wheel. No, that does nothing. Oh, it does.
And actually, an interesting timber fact is that up in North Sheffield, there's a wood called Woollywood there, and a lot of the trees are hornbeam trees. Now, hornbeam is really good, as its name might suggest, because it was used to make the cogs for kind of structures like this, because the wood was so very hard, and also it was quite waterproof. There's actually, when the wheel bits were replaced here, they used oak. But one of the problems with oak is that it's got lots of tannins in that can actually rot the ironwork. Right. So actually, there's kind of knowledge that's been lost about how to use timber in an industrial way.
So if you happen to be building a water wheel,
hornbeam
is your go-to wood.
Yes.
I'm sure there's not many people out there building water wheels, but very useful information if you are. Brilliant. All right, you better lead on.
I think we can head, unless you want to go down that way or go along here.
Much better, doesn't it?
There we go. We'll go this way. I think probably go down here. Yeah, this has got a great name, this road. It's Hanging Water Road, which I'm not sure. I always think it must be a big waterfall somewhere. I'm not sure whether there is one, but it's just a good name.
Yeah,
So this is more, I think, going into more kind of established woodland. Still see we've got the two rivers here.
So tell me about where we're heading off to now.
We're going up into, I think there's certainly Whiteley Woods is up this way, and there's one called Bluebell Woods, which would indicate, you know, bluebells are an ancient woodland indicator, and so that would suggest that actually these are the bits where the trees have been here for a much longer time. I think there's still kind of, one of the things that they try and do in Sheffield is kind of bring the woods back into traditional woodland management, where you would have had something called coppice with standards. So the coppice woods was cut down for charcoal burning, because say the charcoal, these woods, all these many woods across Sheffield, fueled all this steel work. You know, that was the heat that they needed. So charcoal burning was quite a big industry. And the other thing is, what's good for us is that actually having kind of areas of open woodland, you know, open glades and things, is really good for biodiversity, because you have that edge effect and, you know, opens it up to woodland butterflies and things like that.
We're just passing an amazing house built on stilts on the side of this hill, which has got this great view of the river.
There's some incredible houses around here.
So which way are we heading?
We'll go back down that way.
Down that way, okay. All right, so you may be able to hear, it's not just the river, it is now raining. And actually, it's all making the snow a bit slushy. But we're on our way back. We're going to meet a colleague of yours, is that right?
That's right, yeah. So Stella Bolam, who she's a community forestry officer who works for Sheffield City Council. She's going to be joining us, and she worked with me when I was working for the council, and is in charge of planting trees with communities across Sheffield.
Okay, so Stella. Hi.
Hi.
Well, thank you very much for joining me on this rather wet day on the outskirts of Sheffield. So just tell me a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, of course. So our team, Community Forestry, we basically plant trees with people is our tagline, I suppose. So we work with community groups and schools to plant those trees and provide aftercare in the first 3 years, 2-3 years.
Aftercare for the trees?
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously for the people as well. I mean,
give me an example of the type of people you're working with and what you're actually achieving there then?
Yeah, so I can tell you about a couple of projects I did when I first joined a couple of years ago. So one was in an area called Low Edges, which is quite a deprived area of Sheffield, in the south of Sheffield. And we worked with a couple of local groups that were already formed to plant a hedge line through the park. It's quite long, it's about 2,000 whips we planted. We also worked with a group called Kids Plant Trees, who advocate nature-based activities for children, which obviously includes planting trees. And we work with a couple of local schools, so we map all the trees that we plant, so for our records.
And how did you get involved in all of this?
A couple of years ago, I changed careers.
You were a journalist, was that right?
I was a journalist, yeah.
What sort of journalism?
I did print journalism.
The local newspapers?
No, I worked in London for about at least 10 years. I worked in London. I moved up to Sheffield and I was a copywriter.
Right. So a very different world.
It was very different.
It wasn't about nature. You weren't the environment correspondent or anything.
No, not at all. It was human interest stories though. Right. So I've always been interested in people and communities, and that's the thing that I try to embed in my work in community forestry as well, and trying to sort of help people connect with nature and understand that connection a bit more.
You've moved around the country, and we've been talking about how important trees are to people in Sheffield in particular. Is that true? Is that your experience, that it is different here?
Yes, I'm very passionate about trees, and that can go either way. So, you know, there's people that love them and people that are actually quite scared of them.
Scared?
Yeah.
Why scared?
I think because a lot of people don't understand trees. They think they're going to fall over. They say things like, oh, look at it, it's moving in the wind. And I sort of say, well, that's not natural, that's how they grow.
Right.
But obviously I wasn't taught that at school. So people don't have that general understanding about trees. So I try to sort of, I suppose, gently educate people if they do say negative things.
Yeah.
Because I obviously do love trees, and, you know, I think they give us so much.
And you said you work with a lot of schools.
Yeah.
Do you feel young people have a particularly different view of nature and trees than older generations? Do you see any distinction there at all?
Yes, I think that because of the climate emergency we're in, I think kids now are much more attuned with what's going on with, you know, the changes that are happening in our climate. So we do incorporate a little bit of education in our work with schools. So we talk to them about trees, why they're important, and we'll often let them answer. We won't tell them, they'll put up their hands and say, well, because they give us oxygen, or you know, the animals need them. Right. See, I didn't know anything about that when I was at school.
Right.
So I think that's probably quite a major change.
So you must know the area quite well, and there's lots of different parts of woodlands in and around Sheffield. So for those who are visiting, apart from this bit, where would you recommend? What's your favourite bits?
Oh, well, I like the woods near me, actually. So I live in an area called Gleedless and Healy, and there's Gleedless have got various woodlands there that are ancient woodlands, and they're not very well known, but they're absolutely amazing. The other famous one in Sheffield is Ecclesall Woods.
Ecclesall?
Yes, it's very famous here. It's kind of the flagship ancient woodland. It's the biggest one in South Yorkshire.
Right. And you talked about getting into this industry and this career. You're both our experts are both women today. That is unusual. Most of the people I meet working in this industry are men. Is that, first of all, is that true? And is that changing?
It is true, yeah. I think it's currently about, I'm also a board trustee of the Arboriculture Association. So I know some of the statistics around the membership of that organisation. And I think it's between about 11 and 15% of their members are women.
Right.
So yes, it is male, and it's also not very ethnically diverse either. Right. I think it is changing, and I think I can see that sometimes, even when I'm working with kids. You know, young girls who are, you can see they're like really interested, and I sort of always say to them, you know, you can work with trees when you're grown up. You can have a job working with trees. Like a lot of sectors, I think traditionally men have dominated. And I think a lot of women sort of self-select, self-edit them out of their options, really, because you're not told about these things. I mean, I'd never heard of arboriculture 5 years ago.
Well, we've just rejoined the riverbank. It's quite wide. So this is the Porter's River? Porter Brook.
Yeah.
Been told that so many times today. I keep forgetting that Porter River. No, didn't quite get it right. Porter Brook. Is it normally this high? I mean, it's properly going fast, isn't it? You think that's amazing.
Yeah. So I was going to just have a chat with you a little bit about a project called Eat Trees Sheffield.
Eat Trees. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So. This is a project that was initiated by an organisation called Regather Cooperative, but they also are massive advocates of supporting a local sustainable food system, and as part of that it's harvesting apples, and they make a beautiful pasteurised apple juice from apples locally.
From an actual planted orchard?
No, so, well, they actually have just planted an orchard, but No, they basically accept donations from the community.
So if someone's got an apple tree in their garden,
Yeah.
they pull off the apples and send it in.
Yeah, well, they have to bring them in, and they have to be in a certain condition that they're good for juicing, but yes. And then they get a proportion of the juice back. The people that have donated get some juice back.
Idea.
Yeah.
Fantastic
And then they
idea.
obviously sell the juice as part of their sort of more commercial offering. But
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So if you've got a couple of apple trees in the garden and you live around the Sheffield area, what's the name of the charity?
it's called Regather Cooperative. So we're trying to create a network of people that basically can be connected to each other and build skills to look after these orchards, because they do need looking after and valuing.
Yeah.
They're very important. So
Sort of connects
Yeah.
people to their very local trees.
Yes.
It's interesting, I have a very good friend of mine in London who does sort of guerrilla gardening, and on the street trees has just planted runner beans and things coming up. So it just grows up. You can see people walking down and doing, are those beans hanging off a tree? She just pops out and grabs some and goes and cooks with them. And I always think, God, I'm not sure I'd want to eat some stuff from this street tree. God knows what happens there.
yeah,
But I love the idea. I think it's a really fun idea.
yeah. So it's been nice meeting you.
Well, same
Yeah.
here. Same here. So we're back. We're back by the river.
By the river, all along the river.
All along it. So, yes. So final thoughts.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been so great to have you visit Sheffield today, Adam. Like, it's always such a privilege to show people around kind of the bits of our city that are so beautiful. But I think just this walk today in the Porter Valley and the fact that there's so many trees where there used to be industry is something that Sheffield's had going for it. I think throughout the whole of its history, the woodlands were originally so important to be the green lungs of the city, and that was really recognised at the turn of the 20th century. But now if you go into the city centre, there's projects like Greater Green, which is basically where there used to be a very rather ugly road running round the back of the city centre, which has now been converted into 1.5 kilometres of active travel routes. And there the space has been made for trees, so instead of roads now there's kind of special soil and trees and plants and grasses and things like that. That's they look amazing, but also they help to combat climate change. So when the rains fall like they have done at the moment, the trees slow down all the flow of the water going into the River Don. It stops Rotherham from flooding further down, but it also helps, it also encourages people to visit the city centre and enjoy the shade of the trees, and takes up some of the pollution that's in the city. And I think it's these kind of new kind of thinking where we're actually not just looking after the woods we've already got and letting it grow, but actually making new spaces for trees, which I find really exciting. And hopefully that's going to be the future of not just Sheffield, but lots of cities around the country.
That's a brilliant thought to end on. Thank you very much for a fantastic day out. And I was worried that it would be really wet and horrible, and actually, yet again, it's been quite pretty, the snow, and it's only rained a little bit on us, and that's all right. Oh, look, a squirrel.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that visit to one of Sheffield's open wooded spaces. And if you want to find a wood near you, you can do so by going to the Woodland Trust website, www.woodlandtrust.org.uk/find a wood. Until next time, happy wanderings.
Thank you for listening to the Woodland Trust Woodland Walks with Adam Shaw. Join us next month when Adam will be taking another walk in the company of Woodland Trust staff, partners and volunteers. Don't forget to subscribe to the series on iTunes or wherever you're listening to us, and do give us a review and a rating. And why not send us a recording of your favourite woodland walk to be included in a future podcast? Keep it to a maximum of 5 minutes, and please tell us what makes your woodland walk special. Or send us an email with details of your favourite walk and what makes it special to you. Send any audio files to podcast@woodlandtrust.org.uk. We look forward to hearing from you.